Wherever you may be listening, however you may be listening, thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the Cardinals on SI podcast. Every single week, I am your main man, Donnie Druin, joined by the main squeeze, Richie Bradshaw. Before we get into nitty gritty, go ahead, comment, like, subscribe, all of that fun stuff. Giveaway coming soon since no Marvin Harrison Jr. jersey seems to be imminent. Richie, a 16-6 loss for the Cardinals in week 12, coming off of a bye week, a week of rest. There was a lot of hopes, a lot of expectations that the Cardinals would come out and do the damn thing, and the damn thing actually did them. 16-6 loss, and it was just a very prototypical sloppy NFC West battle. Shout out to my dude Richard. It was your prototypical wonky game in Seattle, and I feel like that kind of best describes how the day went for Arizona.
And I think that's more than a fair description, because when you go to Seattle, no matter who you are, typically it's going to be a really sloppy, hard-fought game. This was a sloppy game. You could say hard-fought, but man, both sides just screwed up so many times. There were so many potential shifts in momentum that just weren't there for both sides. Like, the Seahawks missed opportunities too. The Cardinals had plenty of opportunities. There was a lot of missed tackles in this game. My goodness, I felt like I was watching a Cardinals team from 5 or 6 years ago. It was upsetting to see that these guys just fundamentally were not doing the things that you're taught to do. But again, that just comes with the territory of A, playing in Seattle, and B, playing an NFC West opponent. We just have seen this time and time again. It doesn't make it any less frustrating. And I know that Cardinal fans out there are certainly that, but just kind of the way this game rolled out, I suppose.
Yeah, and I don't think there's any season-defining takeaways you can take from this game.
No.
I will say I think the down stretch got a lot tougher, because now you not trying to look ahead too much. The Vikings are 9-2,
yes,
entering next week. It's that's a very tough order for anybody to go into Minnesota and win. Then you welcome Seattle back home for a second matchup in 3 weeks. Things can go sideways pretty quick in the National Football League. I think the Cardinals found it out a little bit earlier in the year, but also it can go so many different ways. Cardinals don't have a great 3-week stretch coming off of the bye. I don't want to say they really needed this win. A win in Seattle would have been very beneficial for a ton of reasons.
Sure.
First and foremost, keeping that division record squeaky clean. Pending the result of Sunday Night Football with the Rams playing right now, you could possibly have a 2-game lead in the NFC West going into the final, 6 games, something like that.
Fly, Eagles, fly.
It would have been very, very big for Arizona. I think their playoff percentage with the win would have shot up to like 70%. Now it's below 50%. So, there's a lot of stuff still on the table for Arizona. But a win would have been very, very big. And like Richard says here in the chat, if not for a defensive touchdown, this game is a single-digit score. That's absolutely correct. We will absolutely get into that a little bit later. And then on the Diaz, I think if I said that right, it says the guys didn't come to play. They needed this loss to wake up from the bye. I think that's actually a really good point. Maybe you needed a wake-up call. Maybe you were on a 4-game winning streak. You went in the bye. You're kind of riding a high horse. I know Gannon does his best to tell us in the media room that, hey, we take things week to week. But from like a player perspective, I think you kind of walk around a little bit differently whenever you're on a 4-game winning streak. Jonathan Gannon is not a big believer in momentum, but I do think the Cardinals had momentum going into the bye week. And I think that week off kind of can sometimes stall a little bit of that. Not to make any excuses for them, but it seemed like they were just a little bit rusty out there. I'm definitely interested to see how they bounce back in Minnesota, but, purely focusing on this game, like the entire first quarter were punts that were swapped between both sides, and you sat there and you're like, this is exactly the kind of rainy, mucky divisional game the Cardinals are about to play in Seattle. And it felt like it was going to be a low scoring affair. And that's exactly how it turned out to be.
That's exactly what it was. Yep. Because like Richard said, if you take away that pick 6, this is a single-digit game. And my goodness, again, it was ugly for both sides of the football. Geno Smith was not very good. He had a great year 2 years ago. He was fine last year. He's super up and down this year. This was one of his down games, and unfortunately the Cardinals weren't able to capitalize. But part of that was Kyler Murray And I wrote about this in a stock report, so please read it. Do not misinterpreting me for slandering Kyler Murray or saying that like he lost this game, because he did not lose this game. There was a lot of contributing factors. He was one of them, but it wasn't solely on him. But we've seen Kyler Murray all season long take care of the football and just play conservatively. And they've won a lot of games because of it. But then you have games like Seattle where you need him to be more aggressive and you need him to not be afraid to take those chances with those 50-50 balls and whatnot. And it's just not there. And this was a game that was very evident with that. There was a drive really late in the game where they were in the red zone. It was a goal to go, I'm pretty sure. And Kyler's surveying and he's looking in the end zone. And I remember I texted you, Donnie. I was like, take off.
Yeah.
Like, I appreciate that Kyler is always looking to throw, but sometimes it really does feel like he just doesn't want to run, or maybe he forgets that he can. Kyler Murray is one of the 5 most athletically gifted quarterbacks in the NFL. And there's times where you just wish he would use it more. Because when he does, oh my God, he's electric, Donnie. We've seen this year there's been some big runs where it's just like, you can't stop that. But this was one of those instances where you really just wish that he had put the ball in his own hands and they didn't end up winning. And obviously that pick 6 was one of the defining plays. I don't know what that was. That was not Kyler Murray. I can tell you that much. That was a weird play. Like, he doesn't do that. So why there? But
Yeah, I'll
a
I'll I'll,
weird
I'll take
play.
over and I'll let you suck in the big ASU win over the weekend. That was a play that Kyler Murray probably makes under Cliff Kingsbury, but not one that we've seen him do a whole lot under Drew Petting and Jonathan Gannon, which is force something. It's 4th and 1. It's a 7-3 ball game. You're in Seattle territory. There's really no need to try to make magic right there in that instance. But if it's a game-winning drive, if it's the end of the 4th quarter, and you absolutely need to keep the chains moving, or it's a do or die situation, I definitely get trying to make a play there. But I don't know.
Well,
It's just there, and then Kyler like taking the sack and not throwing the ball away like a little bit later in the quarter, and then
like,
missing
was
Trey
it supposed to be a
McBride not once
throwaway
but
or?
twice. Towards I think it was the second to last drive of the game,
Mhm.
where they had to kick a field goal. It was not Kyler's best game, but I do think we learned a lot about the Cardinals and how to
Mhm.
stop them. Because if you eliminate the rushing attack, which is exactly what Seattle did today, I think James Conner had
Yeah,
what,
nothing
10
there.
rushing yards, something like that. If you stop the run, the Cardinals can't get into their play action. They can't keep you honest at all 3 levels, and that just makes Arizona such a one-dimensional team. And we have seen them win a football game before in Miami, where they didn't necessarily run the ball a whole lot, but normally it's the opposite. It's not what a Drew Petzing offense is built to be. It's supposed to be a control the clock, pound and ground rushing attack with James Conner leading the way, and that's the exact opposite of what we saw today.
Yep, and like you said, that's just the way that you're going to beat the Cardinals this year. And it sucks and it's unfortunate that, I want to see a little more aggression from Kyler Murray and everything, but that's also just the offense they run. It just sucks because when you need him to be able to do that, I don't know if it's just trying to stick to a game script or something, but this is one of those times where I really wish Kyler had just put the ball or the game in his own hands, because the scheme just wasn't there. But yeah, they eliminated the run game. And Donnie, if you look, perfect, you just pulled it up for us. Look at that rushing: 14 carries, 49 yards, 3.5 yards per carry. What stands out to you when you look at that chart? There's one thing that's really obvious to me when I look at it.
Hit me.
Emari DeMercado's 14-yard rush. 1 carry that went 14 yards. Take that away. 13 carries for 35 yards. That is under 3 clip. So you can look and you can say 3.5, it's whatever. That's not a great day. And no, it was a terrible day. Take
For
away
the
one
Cardinals,
big
absolutely.
run. Right. Yeah. Because other than that, Benson, 4 carries, 18 yards, along of 9. Kyler Murray only had 2 touches. James Conner, was basically non-existent in this game, which is unfortunate because that's typically how you win football games, is by putting the ball in number 6's hands. So run game was eliminated. 3.5 is already bad. It's worse when you take away that 14-yard run. Najee, what's going on, my friend? Abandoned the run too early and should have opened up the game with more runs. Opening drive had 3 straight passes scripted. Yeah, I don't disagree with you. The problem is Seattle's front seven is just so good. And it feels like the Cardinals just weren't prepared for this front seven. That was healthy for once because they've been banged up all year, but they had Byron Murphy Jr., they had Jaron Reed and Leonard Williams and Boye Mafe and everyone that is a big contributor for that front seven was there. And the offensive line didn't have any answers. And that was another unit I was incredibly disappointed with. But
oh yeah,
a
lot of people attacked Jonah Williams for the game he had. I don't think he played great by any stretch, but dude, left to right, all 5 spots got pushed back like shopping carts the entire time. Paris Johnson did not.
He had
look
one
like
of the most
Paris
egregious
Johnson.
holds I've ever seen in my life.
And then he got blown past by a Seahawks defender for a sack late in the fourth quarter. But it's not just Paris, it's not Jonah, it's everybody. As a unit. Rarely have you seen the Cardinals offensive line this year be pushed around like that, but that's exactly what happened.
Exactly what
I tweeted
happened.
this out a little bit earlier is, there's a team that was running the ball, they were playing physical, and they were winning the line of scrimmage. That team's normally the Arizona Cardinals, but not today. Not today. No. Coming out of a bye week, it's tricky. Sometimes you feel a little sluggish, and I feel we saw exactly that today, but you're in the NFL, man. Like you know exactly what's coming to you every single Sunday. I don't think they took this game for granted. I don't think they chalked this game up as a W. Do I think they were confident going to this game? Yeah. Do I think they were too confident going to this game? No. But on the same time, like they got humbled. They got humbled. They were riding a 4-game winning streak coming into this week that they were probably feeling a little good about themselves. And Seattle went out. And honestly, Richie, like the 16-6 scoreline is kind of flattering to Arizona. I feel like Seattle played a much better game. But I mean, if you want to flip it over to the defensive side of the ball, Arizona's defense stepped up numerous times. You take away the pick 6 that Kyler threw, they allowed 10 points on the afternoon.
They were great.
Yep.
Defense, I have no questions about. The scheme that Nick Rallis and Jonathan Gannon have teamed up together to create has been phenomenal. We need to talk about this pass rush. They were not supposed to be this productive. It's crazy the way that they have been able to scheme these guys to have as much success as they have. They had 5 sacks today, and I understand Seattle is a bottom half of the league. It's not a terrible offensive line. It's not a great. It's probably around average, maybe a little below average, but they've been doing this most of the year, is scheming up ways to be able to dial up pressure. This was just another game that they did that, but we got to start giving some flowers to Dante Stills, and I love him, and he just continues to dominate week after week after week. We said this last week. I'll echo it again. The Cardinals bring in Bilal Nichols and Justin Jones in the offseason to beef up the defensive tackles. They end up getting injured, and you find out that your 6th-round pick from last year is better than both of them. And it's an awesome thing to find out. So, I mean, be excited about Stills. He had another good day. He's going to continue to have good days. 4.5 sacks this year, Donnie, and there's still a lot of game left for him to, I wouldn't say double it, but I don't see why he can't get 6.5, maybe 7.5. The way he's playing, why not?
Also, let's shout out Rabbit, man. Adrian Taylor-Demerson leading the team with 9 total tackles, 1 for loss, and a pass deflection. Gosh, dude, he flashed everything you wanted to see out of a safety in preseason, and to see that continue into the regular season against 2 solid offenses, that I would say. Granted, the Jets are a different animal now than what they could have been, but his level of play has been very, very phenomenal. And I think that's really comforting to know whether, Jalen Thompson's out or if Budda Baker were to miss any action. Like you have a solidified number 3 safety that can come in. And to touch on your point with the pass rush, the Cardinals do not blitz very, very much, if at all. Like a lot of their pressure is, like shoot or miss. It's a lot of 4-man stuff. That I do like when Rallis decides to dial it up on 3rd and gotta have it downs, but for the most part, it's just them pressuring as a unit, and a lot of that has to go to the coverage too. I thought the secondary was kind of hit or miss to start the game, but I feel like they really locked in second quarter and beyond, and that's when the Cardinals really started to get after Geno Smith. I do want to address a couple comments in the chat really quick. Petzing did not have a good day. I'll give two thoughts on that. Number one, Jonathan Gannon said in his post-game presser that he basically gave the Cardinals a limited menu to work with whenever it came to their play calling and their selection this week. What that means, I don't know. Could it mean that he wanted to save a little something for the Seahawks coming back in 2 weeks? Who knows? I don't think. Excuse me, I'm going through puberty in case you can tell with the acne. I don't think this is a overall indication of Drew Petzing, but there are some consistent flashes of Arizona's offense stalling. So I do see why people are frustrated. We did touch on Paris's not so great day. Yeah, just there's a lot of frustration with Bird Gang, and understandably so. I'm not willing to overreact to one game, to a tough divisional game on the road against the Seahawks team who like you feel like you're going to split with no matter what every single year, even though they've won 6 games in a row now,
something like that
against the Cardinals. So something crazy, man. But I mean, there are still positives to take away from this, and
sure.
we'll see. They've got such a massive test in Minnesota coming up. But just staying on the Seahawks game really quick. Like I'm confident in the defense. Like even after the loss, I think they showed a lot of really, really good things. And we kind of said this earlier in the show. To Richard's point, you take away the Kyler pick 6, they held Seattle to 10 points on the road. I'll take that.
Yes. Nope. Absolutely. One thing I want to touch on with the Petzing as a fraud. I have been very critical of Petzing this year. I wouldn't say he's a fraud, but there are some very, very obvious wrinkles with this offense this year, and it feels like when they get exploited, it gets exploited pretty bad. I would not call him a fraud. The people that are saying he should get head coaching interviews, I could not disagree anymore. He definitely needs some more time. I've been very, very critical of Drew Petzing this year, but I wouldn't call him a fraud, but he frustrates me on a week-to-week basis. So I hear what you're saying. It sucks to be certain.
And just looking at the team stats, 3 for 12 on third down offensively, that can't happen.
No,
there is no excuse to having that little success. Goal to go 0 for 1 for a Cardinals team that went 16 for 16 coming into this game. A lot of the Cardinals,
that feels good.
Does not feel good. The Cardinals have won close games consistently this year by kind of bending, not breaking, and being very opportunistic on the offensive side of the football. And none of that happened today. The Cardinals were not able to cash in on the red zone to just make it a field goal game instead of a touchdown game late in the fourth quarter. And then the defense so many times has risen to the occasion, Richie. And, they show up in the gotta have it moments. And what happened? Seattle went on an 8-minute drive. Richie, they took over in the fourth quarter with 10 minutes remaining on the clock. Yep. And they gave the Cardinals back the football after the 2-minute warning. That's inexcusable. I will highlight a lot of the positives. I will try to be as very uplifting as I can. That can't happen for a defense that prides itself on making big plays whenever it matters most. That can't happen.
No, I agree. And it's really unfortunate in a game that was a slugfest and in a game where the Cardinals defense played really well when you needed them the most, they just couldn't get off the field. That's the deciding factor in games like this. Look at time of possession. Seattle wins time of possession by almost 7 minutes. How long was that drive, Donnie?
8 minutes.
8 minutes? Yeah. Think about if you cut it in half. You are closer in time of possession, but you also are talking about giving your offense more time and more opportunities to score points. So that's a really frustrating thing. This is one of those times where you look at time of possession and it does matter because it sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. This is an instance where time of possession was one of the most critical statistics of this game. And the final drive of the game for Seattle pretty much exemplifies that of why time of possession was so important in this game. An offense that was struggling couldn't even get back on the field to try and get it right. You're going to lose.
Yep. Nope. 0 for 1 on fourth down, 0 for 2 in the red zone. Just The offense just did not get it done today. And,
Right.
we thought heading into the season that it would have been the offense every week somehow carrying the defense to victory. And today it was almost the opposite. Today it was almost the defense that had to will them to victory. And it's so funny because throughout the practice week leading into this game, Jonathan Gannon praised Kyler Murray's ability to take care of the football, how Kyler was so smart, so aware of the situation. That's ultimately what cost him the game. Now, granted, like no one play determines an NFL game. There's not one play that's just win or lose. There's probably 5 to 6 of those plays, but Richie, like thinking about that Kyler turnover on 4th and 1, the score of the game 7-3. It was so early in the third quarter. I think it was their first drive. Wild, man. Wild. It's, Gannon said after the game, this will be a really good learning experience for them. I hope so, man. I sure hope so, because you're going to go into a red hot Minnesota Vikings team next week, and you're going to have probably one of your toughest tests of the season there at US Bank Stadium.
Yep. This is a perfect game for like, here's some teach tape and a lot of teach tape. There's a lot that you need to sit down and digest in this game. Not teach tape. That's not the word I want to use. There's a lot of teachable moments is more of what I'm meaning to say. There's a lot here to clean up for the Cardinals. And like you said, you need to be able to figure out what went wrong so that you can correct it, because Seattle's offense was kind of stinky doggy doo-doo in this game. Minnesota's pretty hot, and they've got this guy who didn't do anything today named Justin Jefferson, and they just won a slugfest in overtime with him. I think he had 1 catch for 7 yards, Donnie. He's not going to do that again next week. Yeah. That is not something we see very often from the best receiver in football. The Cardinals, him alone is going to take an entire scheme to figure out how to slow him down. But TJ Hawkinson is playing well. Jordan Addison is playing well. Sam Darnold's dishing the ball out. Aaron Jones looks good. Their offensive line is quality. The defense has a lot of stuff to figure out on offense. They've got to figure out some protection, because they just got abused by a good front seven, and the Vikings have a good front seven as well. So there's a lot of stuff to review from this game. Who knows? Maybe it's a blessing in disguise, because you can, maybe you can look back at this and say, you know what? We were humbled. We were going in this a little too full of ourselves. Let's sit back. Let's see where we went wrong, where we were doing too much or too little, figure out how to fix it, because the rest of the season is going to be pivotal at this point to have a shot at the postseason. So maybe this was a necessary loss for the Cardinals to have, if you are trying to feel better about this.
Knowing Jonathan Gannon, one thing I do appreciate him as a head coach is that he never points the finger. He never blames anybody. He will always take self-ownership for anything that happens on the field, at least negatively. You can bet every penny in your bank account tomorrow, whenever they're having team meetings and you're going over film, he's going to say, yeah, you know what? You guys were on a 4-game winning streak. Congrats. That means absolutely nothing now. We lost yesterday. We're in the thick of a divisional race. We could have controlled down the stretch. You need to reset the clock, man. Like if you want to play into postseason, you think you could be the team everybody thinks you can, you need to really get it going. That being said, I do think Gannon will have the guys ready to play a little bit better next week. Bye weeks are tough, man. They're tough because, you have so much more time to prepare. Like, obviously, you get healthier. But, dude, like, you can't replicate playing football. And a week off when you're in the thick of it, especially whenever you're riding high like the Cardinals were on that 4-game winning streak, I think that does have a little impact. I don't think that's an excuse for why they lost today, but I do understand the optics of not playing football the week before and heading into Seattle and trying to be the tough Seahawks team that seems like they're only getting better. It felt like they had a lot of questions around them earlier in the year, but I mean, like, San Francisco got smacked around today by Green Bay. I don't know what the score of the Rams game is, but who knows what they want or don't want to do this year.
Right.
It's a tough division, man. It feels like they really let an opportunity slip this week, but I'm not willing to say the season is over by any stretch of the imagination.
No, not at all. And games are a week to week thing. So, I mean, sometimes you can look and you can say, Cardinals should have walked into Seattle and it should have dog walked them, but that wasn't the case. Sometimes you can 12-7, 13-7. Got it. Okay. Good to know. So it's just a week to week thing. Sometimes you think you're going to be able to outmatch a team and you don't. And sometimes you think you're going to get stomped and you don't. So the Cardinals just went into this game. They weren't prepared. They lost. The season's not over. This is still a team that controls their destiny for the most part. They still have a great shot to win the division.
The good thing is, if the Rams lose tonight, this is according to the ESPN playoff predictor, so take that with a grain of salt or for whatever you will. If the Rams lose tonight, the Cardinals are still technically, if the Rams win tonight, there will be a three-way tie atop the division. The Cardinals will still hold on to that spot. If the Rams lose tonight, then Seattle leapfrogs Arizona for that number one spot. The good news is you still play every team in the division once more, twice in the last 2 weeks with the Rams and the 49ers, a little away home date to settle the score there. There's a lot of time left, which can be a good or bad thing depending on how you look at it. It's not over by a long shot, but they need to learn from this. They absolutely need to learn from this, and they cannot let this snowball. I'm expecting a win I'm expecting a loss against the Vikings next week, expecting a win for Minnesota. There's going to be a
streaky.
lot.
They're up and down.
They are. And like Kyler said in the chat, they struggled against the Bears. Granted, road game, Soldier Field.
What I say, it's a week to week thing.
Didn't Darnold get hurt? Did he go back in?
I think he went back in, but he definitely did get hurt at one point. But I am 90% positive that he ended the game.
To his point, it does not look good if you don't win the division, because the Lions are not running away with the NFC North, but they have a very, very good record. And so do two other teams in the NFC North too. So it'll be really tough to try and secure that last playoff spot.
I hear you.
No?
I do hear you, but he's got to get on the field at some point.
Yeah, I think if this was a playoff game, you start Kelvin Beachum. But I think with 7 weeks to go into the season, you start Jonah Williams and you let him kind of get his feet underneath him. Granted, we saw 1/4 of him before that knee injury happened.
Right.
Kyler said he felt good. Kyler said he was excited to get him back. Jonah played well in the first quarter against Buffalo, but it was a very tough call to watch Kelvin Beachum improve week after week. And for Kelvin to legitimately be playing good football and to bench him for a guy who hasn't played since week 1 and to watch all of that happen. But in case we missed it, we talked about it a little bit earlier. That was not a Jonah Williams thing. That was an entire offensive line issue.
Yep. Jonah Williams was not the only one who played bad in this game. So Paris had a bad game. Interior of the line got beat up. So it was a bad game all around.
You know what? Bad games happen.
Circle one player.
Bad games happen in the NFL, man.
They sure do. What did I say? It's a week-to-week thing.
It is.
But some weeks you're going to play good. Some weeks you're not going to play good.
That's fair. But, the Cardinals, last year it was a clean slate. It was hey, let's just see what we got with this roster. This year, it was more of hey, you got to learn how to win these close games. You got to be adaptable. You got to learn how to win when you can't run James Conner for 100 yards each night. You got to learn how to win when you just can't get everything going. Like, great teams find a way to win. Look at the Kansas City Chiefs. And not to put the two on any same parallel whatsoever, but the Chiefs this year have won in so many different ugly ways, man, but they win. They win because they're a great team. A lot of voodoo.
A lot of voodoo.
I don't know how you get that here to the desert. We'll investigate that. But okay. So to this point, you have to put yourself in positions to get lucky. That's what I'm saying. The Cardinals had no shot of being lucky today, being down 10 points with 2 minutes left to go. And I think that's the overall sentiment of this topic is you got to give yourself a chance. And it felt like the Cardinals, after the Kyler Murray interception, just did not give themselves a chance to win. The good news is that they didn't get blown out. Objectively, they played a bad football game today, and they only lost by 10. Realistically, only lost by 3 if you take away the Kyler Murray pick 6. But if my aunt had a, I'm not going to finish that. But
nope, I hear you. But sometimes you're happy to be lucky than good, but you got to be good to be lucky. And that's why the Chiefs, even though they get lucky, there's a reason they're still winning football games.
Voodoo.
Yes, it's something, man. I don't know. They got something cooking, them in Pittsburgh, but look what just caught up to both of them.
Yep. So it's
week to week.
And you know what? We said this a little bit earlier. The scoreline was a little bit flattering to the Cardinals. It did not feel like a 10-point loss. It felt like Seattle controlled the game mostly from start to finish. And then
there you go. Again, that's the outlook.
It's a big game. I don't want to pin any must wins at this point in the season, but it sure feels like after today's loss, regardless of what happens in Minnesota, you got to beat the Seahawks, man. You have to. Do you, off the top of your head, do you know who the Seahawks play next week?
No, I'd have to look it up.
Okay. Can you look that up really quick while I am yapping?
I can look it up real quick just for you.
To have that opportunity and to let it slip is one thing, but like they can't let this snowball. The worst thing they can do is let this snowball. It's
the Jets, and they're going to MetLife. So who knows? That should be a win, but I mean, week to week.
Week to week.
For all we know, this could be a Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams legacy game. Maybe Breece Hall is a big game, or who knows? Maybe Aaron Rodgers just plays like crap. Don't know. That team is a hot mess. There's too much talent there for them to be as bad as they are, but yet here we are, and they're a bad team. So maybe the talent catches up to them, and they beat the Seahawks. If you're asking me to do a pick 'em, yeah, I'm taking the Seahawks, and I'm taking them pretty comfortably. But who knows? Who knows?
Yeah, I'll take the Seahawks in that matchup. I'll take the Vikings next week against the Cardinals. That puts that matchup at State Farm Stadium in 2 weeks into a very, very big spotlight because that can potentially pretty much decide a division depending on if the Rams or the Niners get their stuff together. Let's play the Bills next week, don't they?
The Niners?
Yeah.
Why do you keep asking me stuff when I got to look it up? Swear, dude, we're gonna fight one of these days.
Should we?
I don't know. Can we stream it? They are visiting the Bills, so chalk that up as a loss.
Yeah, I'm not sure the Rams play next week. I'm not going to ask you to look that up. Heaven forbid. Overall, man, just overall a very mad day for the Arizona Cardinals.
But the season's not over.
It's not, but like you want to see something better after the bye week. But also on the other side of the coin, it's slightly understandable why they played the way that they played, but it's also not alarming. Today was a road bump for me. If I had to classify today's game, it would be a road bump. And it's very important for this Cardinals team to understand that this is not the end of the season, but boy, you better get your shit together very quickly.
Yep.
Very quickly, because if you lose the next 2 weeks, it's going to be really tough to get in that postseason conversation again.
It's a good thing they're not going to lose the next 2 weeks because you know what? The Cardinals had a 4-game winning streak. They won 5 of 6 going into the bye week. This is a Cardinals team that wins football games. Yeah, this is a shit game to watch. There's no cutting it any other way. Just call it what it is. This is a shitty football game, but you still got a lot of time. I stand firm. I know your percentages don't look great. You're still in control of your fate more than the 49ers are, more than the Rams are. You still have a really good opportunity to win this division. You're 2-1, and you still get the Niners at home and you get the Seahawks at home.
Yep.
I mean, even if you split everything,
you get the Rams on the road, but like they don't. They're kind of
like whatever. Dude, SoFi isn't some like dynamic home field advantage, so they're fine. No need to worry about it. You can call it whatever you want. This is a crappy game for sure. Flush it, move on. Look at the tape. How do we move forward? Perfect. Time to get ready for the Vikings.
Yep.
So take today to be upset and focus on what's next. And then tomorrow, for the Cardinals, for the Cardinals, tomorrow comes, we're on to Minnesota.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's a perfect way to put it. Before we dip out of here, though, if you want to change it to a little bit of a brighter mood, Richie, you covered the Arizona State Sun Devils, who are 1 win away from a Big 12 championship appearance.
They sure are, baby. It's hate week. It's going to be a good ass time. Locked on Sun Devils is going to be your go-to if you want to stay up to date with everything that's going on with the Sun Devils. But, vibes are good right now in the Valley. It's a good time to be an Arizona fan. Cardinals are good. Sun Devils are good. Suns are good. Enjoy it. Arizona fans deserve to have some enjoyment.
I would agree. Maybe that comes next week, but unfortunately, Richie, after a divisional loss to Seattle with a lot of playoff implications potentially down the road, tough to see it that way, but you pouring one out?
Pouring some out for the Cardinals. It was tough. It was a tough game. Pour some out. Forks up, Richard.
Forks up indeed. I think we are going to get out of here. Richie, do you have any other thoughts before we dip?
Fall down Arizona and forks up.
Could have said it better myself. Yeah, you know what? Just today sucked. Flush it tomorrow. They'll be all right. It's very vital that they bounce back this week in practice, and they have a good week, which I'm sure they will. Gannon normally does a good job of getting them ready and prepared throughout the week. We'll see if next Sunday we're having the same conversation. But until then, for Richie Bradshaw, I am Donnie Drew, and thank you so much for tuning in to another edition of the SI on the Cards podcast. Follow me on Twitter at Donnie Drew, and follow Richie on Twitter at RichieBrads36. Until then, we'll see you.